How much for the women?
What?
The women, I want to buy your women, the little girl, your daughters. Sell them to me. Sell me your children. How much for the little girl?
I'm sure there's some embraces that were totally innocent.
Come on, make me.
Thank you.
I'm sure there's some embraces that were totally innocent.
You're going to stand right next to me, and then we're going to have switch to you two come here.
Here we go.
You got it? Okay.
I'm sure there's some embraces that were totally innocent.
Okay, got some more family people. Come on in. You haven't got a crowd. Sure. More family people. Come on in. You haven't got a crowd. Sure. More family people. Come on in. You haven't got a crowd. Sure.
I'm sure there's some embraces that were totally innocent.
Can I move just one?
How much for the little girl?
I'm sure there's some embraces that were totally innocent.
Do you know what my dad used to say? My granddaughter said, one, take care of the problem.
I'm sure there's some embraces that were totally innocent. I think you should have that.
Welcome, brother. How are you today? That was a little bit of a interesting one, I think.
You did not, did you? You did not do that, did you?
I most definitely did.
You went there, huh? You went there. Hey.
I think we have to. I mean, I think when we have a creepy type of situation with Cuomo, we have to actually talk about the creepy type of situation with the guy who sleeps in the White House next to the woman he thinks is his sister.
Did you put all that together?
I did.
I'm just amazed. Here we are, 8 months into the into this guy's term, and that's the first time anybody put them together like that.
Well, other people have. People have, just not like that.
Just not like that. My point being, though, that if the fake media was doing their job, I guess that would be well known now. I guess it was the way we were going to start the show, because the news of Cuomo, of ventilator,
Mr. Ventilator. But John, first we have to do our intro. I'm Brother Jim, and this is Brother John. We are the Brotherhood of Liberty, and we are coming to you live from Ballistic Patriot. I am in the Northern Command. My brother is in the Southern Command. Yeah. And
Fortress
so
Liberty.
and by the way, like and subscribe to our show if you're on YouTube. If you're on Facebook, like and share. Make sure you get the message out. The guy over there, that way. That's my brother. That's Brother John. Namaste, yes. And I, of course, am Brother Jim. So tonight's topics are going to be, go ahead now, brother. Topics are?
The fall of Kabul. Kabul,
yeah.
Depending on how somebody says, unfortunately. And the implications, the second half will be the implications for the politics domestically. So first the foreign, then the domestic, or vice versa.
Yes. And so just to be clear, we are going a little bit off pattern than what we normally do for our show, primarily because It's breaking news.
Yeah, events superseded what we were going to talk about normally.
Right. So let's start with the fall of Kabul. Oh, I'm sorry. That picture actually there isn't the fall of Kabul. You'll note that the picture I've highlighted is Vietnam.
Saigon, 1975,
Yes.
the embassy. When
Yes,
other
and
Democrats were in charge.
yeah. So we have well, we have over here we have the photo taken from the embassy. This is the Chinooks landing and taking off, and I have video of that going on here. With you can see in the background of the Chinooks landing, the helicopters landing to pick up the embassy personnel as they are evacuating out of Afghanistan. So we've been there for 20 years now, coming up on, oh, I'm sorry, I think it's 19 years, right, John? Because we went in no, I guess it's 20 years. It's 20 years. Yeah.
This is almost the 20th year anniversary, 1911.
Yeah. So
9/11.
So we've been there for 20 years, and we understand that in the last administration with President Trump that we had a viable plan. We also had a president, though, more importantly, we had a president who had the wherewithal to do the right thing. And we know now that Joe Biden knew that when the curtain went down on Afghanistan, when he took the troops out of there, things were going to collapse pretty quick. He knew that, even though he denies knowing that. It was mentioned in a press briefing on July 8th, and I think we have video on that I'll get up before the end of the show. But I want to point out, brother, some of the other things. So what is going on? I'm going to hand it off to you now. I'm going to give you I'm going to give you some video. Let's talk first of all, Blinken. Here we go.
On moment. That's a reference, of course, to the hasty and humiliating U.S. avoiding a Saigon moment. That's a reference, of course, to the hasty and humiliating U.S. evacuation from Vietnam. But with this troop surge to airlift Americans out of Afghanistan, aren't we already in the midst of a Saigon moment?
No, we're not. Remember, this is not Saigon. We went to Afghanistan 20 years ago with one mission, and that mission was to deal with the folks who attacked us on 9/11. And we have succeeded in that mission. The objective that we set, bringing those who attacked us to justice, making sure that they couldn't attack us again from Afghanistan, we've succeeded in that mission. And in fact, we succeeded a while ago. And at the same time, remaining in Afghanistan for another 1, 5, 10 years is not in the national interest. You know, the British were there for a long time in the 19th century. The Russians were there for a long time in the 20th century. We've now been there twice as long as the Russians. And how that's in our national interest, I don't see. And as I mentioned a moment ago, I think most of our strategic competitors around the world would like nothing better.
So, John, he mentions about how we went there to...
Now, no, wait. I'm going to name him forever now. Ready?
Go for
Baghdad Bilkin.
Baghdad.
Remember Baghdad Bob?
I remember Baghdad Bob. Yeah, okay, I got it. Even though it's the wrong country, I'll take it. I'll take it because sure you want to call
there's nothing wrong here. Look, they're the Americans. We're defeating them on the battlefield. Is that a U.S. tank behind you? No.
Yeah. No, you're entirely correct on that, John. And then he goes and says, "Oh, we defeated the Taliban. We went there to defeat the people who attacked us on 9/11." And John, you notice he never mentions who that was. Why?
Oh.
Because the same group of people who we went to attack are the ones taking over again.
The Taliban man. The Taliban men are back.
And this time, no, we've actually Biden has empowered them by giving them tons and tons of military equipment. So he really, it's worse than Saigon. He's right. It's not Saigon. It's worse than Saigon, because we left Cam Bay, but we also, as you'll find out, have left another hostile enemy alive in the backwoods of one of our enemies. So I mean, now we've just increased the number of enemies we have, with no discernible value. And I got to tell you, John, it's a complete complete devastation for I think for a number of people out there who served. But yeah, so we have that we have on the table in front of us. I also want to bring up this video here. And I want to clarify, we're using CNN. There's a reason why I'm using CNN. It's very simple, because this is the enemy's playbook. And when we can work from the enemy's playbook, I mean CNN, but to be clear, when we can work from their playbook and use their material against them, it is literally exactly what Sun Tzu said when he said, use your enemy against themselves. So that's what we're doing here. Listen to this reporting from the ground in Afghanistan.
Arriving at another U.S. base, and already I can see a large number of military vehicles over there.
According to the Taliban, Afghan forces here surrendered 3 weeks ago when their food ran out, leaving weapons and ammunition and more.
When the Americans were here, were you and your men attacking this base a lot?
Yes, many times we attacked this base when America was here. We did operations. We were using IEDs. The Americans had their helicopters, weapons, and tanks on the ground. We Mujahideen resisted very well.
So these are, John, again, to refer to Baghdad Blinken. He said succinctly that we wanted to destroy our enemy. The enemy there is in one of our old bases. I'm not really sure how that computes, but it certainly is an example of his fecklessness. And the example, and we'll talk about why this happened. There's a very concrete reason why this all happened. So here's that character speaking again.
It's our belief that one day Mujahideen will have victory and Islamic law will come not to just Afghanistan, but all over the world. We are not in a hurry. We believe it will come one day. Jihad will not end until the last day.
It's a chilling admission.
So, and the last clip.
Wait a minute. That means the Taliban are going to start doing terrorist activities again. That doesn't sound good. That sounds like they're going to get right back to. Unfortunately, though, the idiot DHS, which should be abolished, is just came out this weekend. We're probably going to talk about the fact that DHS is declaring homegrown anti-vaxxers and anybody who disagrees that Joe Biden was actually elected in an election as extremist right-wing terrorists and need to be persecuted for that. Unfortunately, our DHS, maybe somebody should send a memo to them saying, hey, the Taliban are back in business again, ready to rain down more jihad on America. But, we would have to have some kind of competency either in the State Department, the DHS, or the White House for that to happen. So I don't think that's going to happen. But maybe all the rest of us should start looking out.
By the way, John, I want to take a moment to go over some vocabulary for the more challenged out there, meaning Democrats, and those specifically who were on the January 6th Commission. What we are seeing in Afghanistan is an actual insurrection. I want to make that clear. What is going on right now is an insurrection.
James,
what we saw
did these guys vote for Trump?
Was not.
Did they vote for Trump?
I know. Maybe
and by definition, it cannot be an insurrection.
You make an excellent point, John. You make an excellent point. So I just want to be clear to all my feeble-minded friends out there who want to say January, Scott, I'm talking about you. Those January 6th is an insurrection. No, sir, we do not have a January 6th insurrection. What we do have is, in fact, an insurrection going on in Afghanistan. So let's do a congressional hearing for that, shall we? I think that would be extremely interesting to hear how the Democrats would be, prattling on. Oh no, this wasn't Joe Biden's fault. It was all Trump's fault. By the way, John, I wrote on Facebook, within 24 hours, this will all be Trump's fault. Guess what? Vox and Vice came out. Yep, it's all Trump's fault. Blaming him. Orange man bad. It's all Trump. It's amazing. You would think that he was. Listen, if they want to blame him, I'm all for that. Let them blame President Trump. but let's put him back in the White House.
They
If
know
you wanna
he's really
blame
the
man-
president, James.
Yes.
They
yes.
really know. He's still the
Yeah.
president.
Yeah, according to them, he is, because it's all Trump's fault. Even though there's a different clown sleeping in a White House. There's a clown sleeping in a White House next to a woman that he thinks is his sister. So here we go. There's some more. Now let's go talk about, so for all those left-wing, people who are all for women's rights, and I'm all for women's rights, so this bothers me a lot. But I want to point out that this is another, we know that Joe Biden likes to, grope and stuff like that. We saw the video earlier. And we know that happens more than it should, because once is too many. But we now have evidence of him now being okay with this happening in other parts of the world. So women being put in their place.
Taliban takes power again, women's rights will move backwards. How can you guarantee that women's rights will be protected?
We assure this to people all over the world, especially the people of Afghanistan. Islam has given rights to everyone equally. Women have their own rights. How much Islam has given rights to women, we will give them that much.
That is clearly open for interpretation. Next to the mosque, we find a classroom of young girls. But their teacher says they will only receive religious education and will not attend regular school. At night, I am separated from my male colleagues and sleep in the women's part of the house with the children.
I've been talking to some of the women in this room, and I promised that I wouldn't show any of their faces, but it's interesting because, the Taliban talks a lot about how it's changed and girls can go to school now. But I asked if any of these girls would be going to school, and I was told, absolutely not. Girls don't go to school. And when I said, why don't girls go to school? They said, Taliban says it's bad.
Here, what the Taliban...
So there we have it, brother. Another example of the unintended or the intended consequences of the far left. This is keeping individual women who when Americans were there had more freedoms, or could have had more freedoms. Instead, we have a run amok Taliban back in place. And if you remember, brother, a few years ago, there was this young girl who was mutilated and was able to escape from Afghanistan. There was a movie about her, a big deal that was made about her. And here we are, we see setting the scene for all the women of Afghanistan to be treated the same way. So when we look at this, we're looking at Joe Biden. What's on his hands is not just the loss of American dignity, but also the loss of pride and our standing as keepers of the peace around the world, which, Trump wanted to get us out of there too, but he would have done it in an orderly fashion. He wouldn't have backed down. I want to emphasize the difference of the way these two people work and handle things, because you'll note, brother, as we look at this report from Harris was a key role, part of the key role decision making in Biden's Afghanistan withdrawal.
Boy,
so
she helped out on the border too.
Yeah,
and this.
Yeah, it's amazing, right?
Boy, is she good.
Everything that these two touch turns to garbage.
Remember what Obama said? Do not underestimate Joe Biden's capacity to, and then he says the curse word.
FS up.
Right. Do not underestimate it.
Yeah. No, well, true enough, brother. Joe Biden has a singular ability to do that. But, I want to point out July 8th, when he was informed that the intelligence services thought that it was going to be the Taliban taking over, he said, no, they didn't say anything like that at all. So I don't know, brother, if it was a willingness on his part to ignore the information, whether he was just completely dementia going on, and he didn't remember the briefing that he had, or he was just lying through his teeth. And we can talk about that in a minute. But before we do, I want to point out this heading from the New York Times. And again, we're using the left's propaganda mouthpieces against them. We've done it with CNN. Now we're going to do it with the New York Times. I want to make it clear before they start supporting Joe Biden again that Joe Biden is asking the Taliban for support. He's asking them, please help us so that, help us get our people out so that we can, in fact, we'll give you stuff if you let us get our people out. He's begging them to do this. Now, there's, Blinken is denying this, but, the New York Times, John, it's not a right-wing newspaper. So they must have gotten their information from somewhere. So we can safely assume that the New York Times has that information correct, because also, again, look at the character of the individual involved, right? Biden would, of course, do whatever he could in order to save face, and also so would Barry, his buddy, who's really the guy pulling some of those levers behind the scenes. Of course, what do you call him? The guy from Southeast Asia?
No, the village idiot from Indonesia.
The village idiot from
Somewhere in Indonesia, there's a village missing its idiot, and we should do our best to send him back. Just like there's one in Texas who was missing their idiot, who wandered away into the presidency.
Yeah,
Troy, are you going to play it, or are you going to me to comment?
I don't have. Go ahead, comment.
Right. So there are a couple comments on this. So first, about the Taliban and women. If you remember back when this all began, one of the things the Taliban came over when Omar, the one-eyed mass murderer, came over and cut that deal with Osama bin Laden, was the Taliban were instituting a caliphate of Afghanistan under the most strictest rules imaginable. So they were literally taking women teachers out and executing them in front of their students. They were literally making all women cover or rape and murder them. They were doing all these horrific things, atrocity after atrocity after atrocity. We just washed our hands of it and didn't think anything of it. Now one of the reasons why this is worse is because of the domino effect of the region. That happened just like it did back when Saigon fell and South Vietnam fell, and it's eerily the same. It is Saigon all over again. The reason why, of course, is because it's a myth and a lie that the North Vietnamese beat America. America, under General Abrams, chased all the first. They were all the Viet Cong were destroyed in the Tet Offenses, and then General Abrams chased all the North Vietnamese units out of South Vietnam, and there was relative peace. We stopped all combat operations in Vietnam, withdrew, and then with the agreement that the Air Force they have air support and money, much like the plan was for this. Then, of course, the Democratic Congress cut the money, and in a year and a half, the South Vietnamese army collapsed. Now, it was strictly collapsed. It took about a year and a half, and you can tell this because in those pictures, and you're going to see them now, you will see tanks rolling down, Chinese and Russian tank made rolling down into from North Vietnamese into South Vietnam. If it was the guerrillas taking over, then you wouldn't have tanks. This is a historical fact that I've not been able to impress on the idiots in the so-called academia for the last 30 years. But it's an absolute fact that General Abrams and America won the war in Vietnam. And it was only given away by the Democrats. Interestingly enough, Joe Biden was a senator when that happened for 2 years. So he's been doing nothing and screwing up foreign policy for the last 50 years. Now, it is just like that. Then after that goes Laos, and then 2 million dead in Cambodia. And so the domino effect did happen, just like it happened with Iran in the fall of Shah, and in the 1970s when the Democrats again, good old Jimmy Carter, allowed the Shah to fall, the radical communist French Ayatollah Khomeini take over and create the Republican Guard, and if it wasn't for Al Qaeda, they've killed more Americans as terrorists and the Iranians than Al Qaeda, except that Al Qaeda had that one big day. Now, the reason why it's a horror show, and it's worse than both those incidents, is because this potentially could be another domino, starting another domino's fall from our our barely standing up Iraq state to Kuwait to throughout the Middle East, because and then war in the Middle East will begin again after Trump put an end to it, because you are now re-radicalizing, allowing another base in Afghanistan, whose goal has always been to destroy the great Satan. The little Satan is Israel. We're the great Satan because we're the bigger than Israel. So that's why that's foreign national wise. That now there's 2 points about that. I'm getting to my point about women. One of the things that we should on this show keep pointing out is the stupidity of the creep elites. These are the people that are in Washington, D.C. These are the State Departments. These are all the generals and all the morons who go about their lives trying to destroy America. Think about the village idiot from Indonesia. Here's this idiot who gets hundreds of millions of dollars. I'm not going to say he did it for corruption reasons, to sell stuff to create green energy for Solinda, and then he goes buys a house in Martha Vineyard, right by the beach. If he really believed in global warming, why would he buy it right to the beach? We're gonna have thousands of feet of water. It's going to be wiping out his $12 million investment. If he really believed that we needed mass, why is he unmasked in his 60th birthday creating a super spreader incident, right? Because he's now magically he's fallen upwards. As the Peter principle is, he was the village idiot in Indonesia, and now he's the village idiot in Martha's Vineyard. Right? It's absolutely amazing. When are we going to realize that these idiots lack virtue and that they're a bunch of evil little liars? Now, of course, this is going to happen. There's a truism. There are no atheists in foxholes. Well, the other side of that is our point in the Dopey Utopia. Well, the other side of that is, but in the Dopey Utopias, there's nothing but atheists, right? And these are fools who are so isolated from society in the real world that they can believe dumb nonsense, like good old Joe Biden. Oh, I know all this stuff about foreign policy. I've been there for 50 years. If people remember, good old Barry didn't have any foreign experience, and that was one of the cuts against Barry. So he hired good old Joe as his vice president, because good old Joe had worked his way up in the Senate for I don't know how many years, 30 years, 40 years, whatever, 40, and was in charge of foreign policy. So he was brought on specifically for his foreign policy expert, which consists of what? We just saw how bad he blew it, right? So he put him in there, and he was in charge with Obama, and then Obama wanted the surge, and then good old Joe said no on the surge. So exactly how is this Trump's fault? All the creep media and the CNN, it's what these fake corporate shills for the Chinese did was badmouth Trump when he pointed out the simple fact that these guys have no plan. And he yelled at them, and he said, how dare you do that? These men are patriots. You didn't serve, blah, 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 bull crap. Once again, when are we going to realize these so-called self-appointed elites over us, their self-appointed betters, are a bunch of flaming morons? Okay. Now, about the women and why this is important. We knew this 20 years ago when we said it. Either you go in there, and when good old Osama bin Laden hides in Tora Bora on this big mountain, you blow it up with a nuke and say sometimes the big dog's got to roar so that all the little chirpies know who's the big dog, or you do it seriously. And the only way to do it seriously is to impose American values on this area. You can't allow this evil of the Taliban to exist, or their virulent form of Islam to exist. You can't condone it or try and pay it off. You don't appease it. It's never going to go away unless you do what we did to the Germans, or you do what we did to the Japanese. Hey, they're fine. Democracy and rights are fine basically in Germany and Japan, but for a reason. Was never going to work. And we pointed this out way back when. When we said it from our very first shows, we pointed out there's an old British general named Napier, and when the British took over India, they go in there and they find the quaint Indian practice called sutti. And in that practice, what would happen be that grandpop dies. So the Indians, these are the Indian Indians, they would build a big funeral pyre and burn up grandpa, the remains of grandpa. Fine. That's their tradition. That's what they believe. Fine. Who cares, right? Indians were, the British troops were absolutely fine with that. But then, because of the nice, quaint little practice of sutti, they would grab grandma, who was still alive, and throw her on the funeral pyre too. Now, General Napier, once he heard that, he goes, whoa, that's going to stop. You can't be throwing grandmom on funeral pyres, all right? I don't care, right? And so he was explaining, no, you don't understand. That's our religion. That's our practice.
And the left on it at the time, the left-wing idiots at the time said,
the dopey utopians.
The dopey utopians were all pushing against him and making him accept it.
How dare you do that? That's their practice. And he said, fine. You have your practice. We
Joe
have our
Bidens,
practice.
The Joe Bidens of that time.
Right. We have our practice. Your tradition has you throwing grandmom onto these funeral pyres. So you build your funeral pyres. We're going to build gallows right next to them. So you practice your tradition, and then we'll practice our tradition, which is real simple. We hang people who throw grandmoms onto fires to burn them alive. And in 1 year, don't you know, as Sarah would say, they stamped out the evil practice of sutti in India in 1 year. So we're either stuck with this solution. We either have to go full American on their ass, or full Roman on their ass, actually, which is the better description. Their third time was a charm for the Romans in Carthage, right? And in the state of Israel, right? They let them get away with one war, second war, third war. That's it. They pulled down all the windows of the buildings, sold it to the earth, sold everybody into slavery. That's it, right? So we either go full Roman on their butts, or, the problem with the world is this. Jesus Christ created everything that we call that's good in America. There's nothing new under the sun except for the life of Jesus Christ and the physical manifestation politically and economically in the country of the United States of America. So we either have to believe this stuff and go forward with it. The idea that we're going to bring this light to the rest of the world and saying, you know what? I don't care what version of Islam you have. A version of Islam that puts everybody in clothes, so they can't see. If a woman is enclosed, so she has no rights. That considers it's okay to rape a woman if you find her without enough of the male members, and it considers it's okay to shoot teachers in the face because they're trying to teach little girls how to read. That's one of those things that we're going to hang you for.
Right.
Those are some of the things we're going to hang you for. You have your tradition. We have our tradition. Now, and that's where the reason why I have to make this point, though, is how does America not do this? How does the West not do this? It's real simple. It's the story of Jesus and the prostitute in the New Testament. A woman, an adulterer or prostitute, was brought in front of him. The Jewish religious of that time knew the law. The law was stone her to death, right? And they were doing that. I don't care. I don't want to hear this nonsense. Every society there's ever been has stoned women, okay? And you can get your fancy little phone right now. You can go look up, if it's still on YouTube, because I couldn't believe it, but then I saw it, stoning of women, and you see a bunch of, I think it was India or Nepal or someplace like that, women and men picking up stones, taking stones and stoning some poor woman and filming it on their fancy little iPhones. Every society has done this from the beginning of time, except for one guy who stopped it. And when he stopped it, he said, he challenged them all. You're right. That's what the law says. Stone the woman. Let he who has without any sin stone. So, throw the first stone. And then one tradition has he wrote all their sins in the sand in front of them as they would come up. Murderer, thief, adulterer themselves, and they all walked off. Another tradition is he was just playing with the sand there. But anyway, they all left at some point. And then he says to her, he doesn't say to her, "Oh, go, keep doing what you're doing." He says, "No, I don't judge you either. Go and sin no further." Right. And so that story repeated again and again throughout the course of 2,000 years established that, and the fact that women were also created by a God and also deserve the rights in John's Gospel 15:15 that we're all God's children, right? and that we're all made in God's image. That those, the life of Jesus repeated again and again and again has created a new thing in the West where women are equal, where women have equality. So unless you're going to say, hey, that's wrong, shooting female, I'm pretty sure it was a female teacher, they shooting in the face because they're teaching little girls how to read, you're just screwing around and half-assing it. And that's what these fools have done. Now, I want to say, because our great roving ballistic patriot reporter, Sammy the Whammy, points out that a lot of our service people are very upset because they lost 7,000 in these two wars and 31,000 through the consequences of having, drugs and all the rest of it. And as she said so beautifully, and it's so true, they have nothing to feel bad about. They did the right thing when it came their term. It's everybody else who did not do the right thing. And who are the people who did not do the right thing? The freaking Democrats. Because whenever America tries to do the right thing, who are the jerks, the scum, the people who lack virtue, who undermine, look, I can get a political ahead by freaking jumping on Trump because he's just pointing out something. How come these fools continually do the wrong thing? Abandon Vietnam, abandon the Shah, abandon the government in Afghanistan. I'll tell you why. Because they lack virtue. They're a bunch of creeps. Well, you said it. They're corrupt. They're totally corrupt. Because they worship the guy down there, because they're not worshiping the guy up there, they continually do the same crap. When is the American people going to realize the domestic enemy, Mr. DHS, which needs to be thrown out now, is not the Trump voters? It's the Democrat Party, well, the way it's always been. Duh.
Well,
as far as I know,
I would amend that, John.
war.
I would amend that to add two different groups, because there are Republicans who are just as guilty. There are the uniparty jackasses that we need to deal with as well. Those on the right, those like Lindsey Graham, and those who side with whatever it is to advance themselves. We also have the bureaucrats, because inside the State Department, inside the DOD is a bunch of bureaucrats who build their reputation on thinking that they can fix things, these neoliberal nonsense types of things, like Afghanistan being one nation, that the Taliban being one group of people. They're not. They're all different tribes. It's tribal region. It's known as a tribal region for a reason. It's not just somebody just labeled it that. It's known that for a very good reason. You cannot, if you're going to craft a society out of the tribes, you're not going to do it by the neoliberal model. You need to address it just the way you were talking about with Napier, and the way Napier turned India and others like him, the British system, turned that tribal region, because that was tribal, into one country. Now that was the basis of it. Not perfect, had a lot of growing pains, but still, that's historically that's what happened. That's how they did it. But you can't do it by this quote unquote respecting their view and their culture. When you have a culture that treats women as second class, when you have a culture that kills off their heroes and allows their heroes to be killed off because they stand up to the bad guys, because that's one of the things that was pointed out to me by a guy whose piece I read on this, who was over there for a number of years.
Is this where you're going to go on the five?
No, I kind of sort of. I want to mention that, but I'm not going to. I think we should probably get him on for a show, John. I think we should talk about getting him and a couple other people that we know on for a show to interview him on this frontline material. But I do want to point out that this is, these are the other groups of people that we need to hold accountable, because they've been there for 20 years. We can change presidents, we can change senators, we can change congressmen, but we can change generals. But one of the things that is not changing is the bureaucracy that has in their mindset the same problem that we had with Iraq, same problem that we had with Afghanistan. These neoliberal ideas that they are the only way to fix these areas. And if we should fix them, Maybe we should just go in there, wipe things out, and leave. Leave it a disaster. Let it stay a disaster. That might be an option, because if it's a disaster area, that we keep a disaster.
Sometimes the big dog's got to bark so that all the little chihuahuas know who the big dog is. Right?
Exactly.
Exactly.
Exactly. It's not
you,
the nice thing to do. It's not the humanitarian thing to do. But then again, them blowing up our cities, attacking our buildings, trying to kill Americans, they're not being nice either. So why the hell should we be nice? I'm just pointing out, we've created another Iran. That's what they've done. Biden has created a second Iran in the Middle East, a second hub of terrorism.
He's combined two previous democratic disasters, Iran and the fall of Saigon and South Vietnam, into one.
Right.
He is so good at this. He is just the smartest guy. But is this where you're going to go on to your points about China?
Yes, I want to hammer.
Right.
But
that's our last international part, and then we should probably move to domestic after that. But Duke, because it's an important point. I have one more thing to say about that. About this. Go ahead.
By the way, our buddy Jim there feels that 70% are swamp, and yes, correct, Mundo. You might be a little light on the number. You might want to go a little higher. So I want to talk about what could be a real possible reason for why this happened. Now, international news, you got to look at international news as a whole, or international, you got to look at it as a whole. You can't look at it from region to region. You need to piece it out all together and see it from what it is. And John, as you know, there is another country out there that we have a bit of a foreign policy issue with, that we're having problems with. That country, of course, is one that we've talked about often over the last year and a half or so, has been China. We know that China is evil. We know that China does a lot of bad things. But specifically, I want to dive in to one of the biggest problems that China has had is their Muslim population, the Uyghurs, as they're known. And they also have another group of people that has been giving them a hard time, the Tibetans. And then there's a third group that has been giving them a hard time in their country, and they really have had to stamp them down. They put the Uyghurs in concentration camps. They've increased the military presence in Tibet. They've trying to strip the culture in Mongolia, the Mongolian region, and all three of these regions, John, are prime territory to be resistance movement areas where it doesn't take much to get it wouldn't take much to get the population to rise up. For one of the big key things that we've talked about in China, and especially with the Uyghurs, is not only are they being put in concentration camps, that's bad enough. But what they're doing is the men that are put in these concentration camps, they are then having their apartments sold to full Chinese members of the party, and these men who are buying these apartments also get the family that's in there. So you have the Chinese male going in and living and sleeping with the Muslim wife. This is, one thing you can know for sure is if you sleep with any man's wife, they're going to be very annoyed. This is especially the case if you're a Muslim man, because that is the cornerstone of your pride. Now, that I just mentioned is one of the abuses, as long as the concentration camps, and of course the Falun Gong and the cutting up of body parts
and the stealing of property, everything.
Exactly. So you have that simmering population just waiting, looking for somebody to give them support. And it's very easy to miss it, but and it's a very mountainous region of Afghanistan here. But I'll put it up on the screen here. Here's a decent map. Now, Afghanistan is not labeled on this map. Here's the province that I was mentioning. The Uyghur province is this one. And if you notice this little spit of land right here, this is Afghanistan. That's Afghanistan. It's a very mountainous region. But John, you know as well as I do, that's a benefit if you want to smuggle things across it. As we well know from what happened with Pakistan and Iraq and Afghanistan when the Taliban were sneaking across the border for the last 20 years. So we know that's completely doable. We can see it better here. Here's Afghanistan. Here's China. Here's the province I was talking about, brother, the Uyghur province. Here's Tibet, which has got border of India. And then over here we have Mongolia. This is, so we can see these three regions are tied together. And John, if we still held Afghanistan, if we had 10,000 soldiers, 15,000 soldiers in that region, we would be able to, and I don't hear anybody talking about this. No one else is talking about this. But if you had 15,000 American troops in that region, helping to supply and funnel weapons material into the Uyghurs and into, through India, through Tibet, because you really might not be able to get through India, because India might not want to be a part of it.
Yeah.
But if you have those American troops in Afghanistan, screw the Afghan government, the Americans are going to do what we want anyway, because we're Americans. And we would definitely smuggle in supplies to these Uyghurs to help them out, to help them rise up. Now, John, I've talked about this a lot. For every one soldier in the field, you need 3 soldiers to support them logistically. This province this size, with a population this animated, this dangerous, you would need at least 200,000 Chinese soldiers to keep them in check, with all the material, with all the logistics involved. Notice, John, it's on the far side. If you look at China itself, over here on the eastern side of it, I'm sorry, on the eastern side along the coast, that is the built up. That's where the food is made. They're grown. That is where the industry is. That is where the population is. That is the strength of it. It is on that eastern end. The logistics, having to support a 200,000 man army out here, becomes increasingly difficult and increasingly expensive. So my point being is, if you really wanted to hamper China,
or help, help the poor oppressed.
We'll talk about that. And help the oppressed. If you really want to help the oppressed rise up, and you want to get China to have to spend, and it would be up to 1 million people, manpower, to hold down these 3 provinces, between the support and between the actual soldiers on the field. You're tying up 1 million man of their army, which is large in itself, but it also means it takes it away from strategic points along the East Coast, which means, by the way, decreases their Navy, the strength, decreases their rocket battery strength, decreases a whole list of things. Their Air Force, their Army, it would decrease them and hurt them, and really help the United States coming to defend Taiwan. I mention all this, and this is a little long-winded here, but I want to get to the point is if you wanted to take away, if you were China and we're smart, and we got to expect our enemy to be smart, John. We can't expect them to be dullards and idiots. We have to expect them to be able to see through these things. The one thing you would want to do is get America out of Afghanistan. And the one thing you want to make sure you do is get rid of that little spit of land as a possible infiltration route for supplies, weapons, money, you name it, food. We could supply it. And all the cost would be is what we spend to keep 15,000 soldiers in the field. When you look at it like that, brother, it makes perfect sense that Manchurian candidate, Joe Biden, would want to assist his buddies, his son's business partners, the Chinese, and help us get the hell out of Afghanistan. Not only that, but make sure an enemy of America was in charge of Afghanistan, so we couldn't roll back in there and take it over. So now he's made it implausible for us to do just that. He's made it implausible for us to go back into Afghanistan. He's made it implausible for us to have Afghanistan as a base. You could also call it, if it ever did turn into a shooting war, John, you could call it a carrier, a unsinkable carrier. Because how many Air Force bases could we have launching our bombers, our fighters, and whatever the hell else we wanted, our rockets, into China? Now, all of a sudden, the war with China wouldn't be along the eastern coast. Now it would be a complete circle, or at least a 3/4 circle, between India and Afghanistan and the East. And of course, John, who helps him out? Manchurian candidate Joe Biden. That's
Well,
my piece.
It's not necessarily a like a conspiracy theory, because just a couple of weeks ago he made a really off non sequitur when asked about potentially the fall of Afghanistan. He said, "Well, what do you want me to do? Like help the Uyghurs?" And at the time it was just a non sequitur, non sequitur, because it didn't make any sense. But with the business ties, like they say, always follow the money, right? For corruption. Well, the other part of the money is to follow who benefits. Who benefits from all of today? Who benefits from this happening? I just wanted to say, though, just for the benefit of the village idiot from Martha Vineyard. At one point in the election against Mitt Romney, he made a comment that the 1980s is looking for the foreign policy back. I just want to say, yeah, and the 1980s is also looking for the foreign policy back there too. Village idiot from Martha's Vineyard, but we should probably move on because we don't have that much longer. To what are the implications for the American election scene now? Going to happen. Let me set it up, because we were going to talk today about the fall from grace, if you would, of Andrew Cuomo and the ventilators, because 11 women came by. Now, and I know that that's not the real reason why Andrew Cuomo is being removed from office. He killed 15,000 old people. What the hell? They can't afford to lose him from office. But his big sin wasn't the fact that he molested and grabbed and felt the chest of. I mean, because that's the way they're supposed to refer to it now, feeling the chest of, and not the actual, thingies. But and
the actual boobs.
You can't say that. Come on, trying to be good. So anyway, because look at good old Governor Northam from Virginia, right? Governor Northam, that racist scumbag baby murderer from down there, he was caught in blackface, and his defense, because it's not a defense, but his fake defense was, you can't tell if it's me or the guy in the white sheets in the Ku Klux Klan. The reason why he wasn't removed from office, because he's such an embarrassment, though, is real simple. Because it looked like he was going to be replaced by a Republican, and it was going to benefit the Republican Party because Virginia's still fighting it out. So the Republicans still have a chance there. So once that became clear, that was the end of removing good old Governor Northam. Just like in New York, the only reason they got Cuomo out of there isn't the fact that that there's some, isn't the fact that he did these horrible, he killed 15,000 old people and he molested all these women. No. The Democrat Party is completely fine with that. They've always been fine with that. As you saw in the first video, the reason why is because there's nobody on the Republican side to replace him. So these are Democrats taking him out. And so that brings up a bigger question. Now that this is happening to good old Biden, and he has his own Me Too, see Tara Reid problems. The question we've always asked is, how long is good old Slow Joe going to be in there? Is this the final end politically for Slow Joe? You had some thoughts on this about the election map coming up. So why don't you hit that?
I also want to mention, you and I had talked earlier, and I just let us in on a little bit of that conversation. That you guys in it, that there was no Republican in the field in New York that could possibly fill the vacancy or go after.
Was going to be benefited in any way, shape, or form by Cuomo leaving.
But our mutual friend, he pointed out, he just texted me and pointed out that a couple weeks ago, they actually got rid of really the only Republican who could have done anything, which was Rudy Giuliani.
There you go. Right. So great, but show us the election map, because chances are we're going to win the House. Also, show us the battle for the Senate coming up.
Here's the Senate. We have the Senate in front of us. We have they want to say that we have 3 contested elections, which is North Carolina, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin. So my take on that is that it's a little bit more than that. We have Arizona, which is certainly going to be contested, especially with all the election integrity issues that are coming to the front, that are activating many Republicans. Same is true as in Nevada, as many Republicans many people are becoming frustrated with the idea that there was a number of people who voted who really weren't there or really weren't living there. Wisconsin, of course, we know, John, we now know that there was a bunch of hanky-panky going on in Green Bay when the person in charge of the election was sent packing, and they put a partisan in charge, a Democrat partisan, by the way, not to be surprised, of course, and that I think it was 250,000 people, according to the Supreme Court of Wisconsin, voted illegally. In other words, they sent in their ballots and because they were told that they could, but in the reality, because they wanted to stay home and said that was okay for them to. I guess they could not leave, so they were invalid if they could not leave because they felt their life was at risk, and consequently, you could look at the vote in Wisconsin as being another fraudulent set of votes. But the point being, it activates a lot of Republicans to get to the polls and start pushing back. So that's, I think Wisconsin really isn't in play. I think it's going to be solid Republican. I think PA, same issue in PA that I just mentioned with the, we talked about with Wisconsin, all the election integrity issues. PA is going to go Republican as long as they got a good candidate. Now with the stuff going on in Afghanistan about how that is all that sacrifice is, for nothing. And the people who are blamed for this squarely falls on the Democrats. So people are going to have to start abandoning Biden and turning him into the what is that horse that nobody wants to be in? Nobody wants to be the whatever it is, the jackass of the party. They're going to turn him into the jackass of the party. They won't have anything to do with him, or they're going to lose the elections. So that's my general take for all the elections. And by the way, I think we're going to see that. I think if we really want to say how do we test it? What's the test? The test is going to be this November because New Jersey and Virginia both are supposedly leaning blue states. If there's a massive turnout for a Republican and a not a big turnout for the Democrat, that's more evidence of that red wave that we've been talking about. And it's going to be not just for the House. It's going to be for the Senate. And it's also going to be for the governorships. All right, brother? That's my breakdown on the Senate. The House, I'll let you talk. You want to talk about the House?
They only have 3 votes. There's no way, traditionally Americans are very good voting out they like the idea of divided government. We grew up knowing that divided government is the best way to always go forward. So there's always the incumbent president almost always loses the next election. Right now, Nancy's only got 3 votes. Because we predictably called it. And if you go back to our analysis, one of the reasons why we know the election was stolen is even in those areas, there was another 10 or so. We called it the Ballistic Patriot called the House more closer than anybody else because there's still another 10 plus led by your good old friend Gottenheim of these so-called moderates and in these swing districts, which will probably go against the Democrats. And the bigger the crap heap, what do they call it when you have a bonfire, when you have a fire, the bigger the trash dump fire that Afghanistan lets off, the less likely the good old slow Joe is going to stay because he was only a placeholder for Obama, the Cruz elected successor Kamala. And so the question is, if they lose the House and the Senate, remember number 3 in the secession rules, say Joe Biden is removed because he's got dementia. Say he's removed because he's got his Me Too problem with Tara Reid. Finally, somebody finally listens to Tara Reid. Whatever the reason, then they're going to have a to approve a backup to Kamala Harris, acceptable backup as when she's advanced to presidency for vice president. Why would a Republican House or a Republican Senate let that happen, especially when they're the next ones. They're number 3 and 4 on the secession list, according to the 25th Amendment. So they are on a time crunch almost in that, and this dumpster fire is going off. You know, you have double-digit inflation. You have no longer independence, and you have no longer the fall of Kabul. You could literally have a domino set off. The reason why, and Trump's response was its weakness. And this is why, for all these so-called smart people, they have no idea because they've never been in a fist fight. They're a bunch of morons. You know, this is why Trump spoke the way he did and why he acted the way he did. Because now this dumpster fire is waving a red flag to good old Vlad, okay, whatever he wants to do in Ukraine. How many more chunks of the Ukraine or Latvia or the other countries is he going to snap off? You know, the Middle East. You know, the Palestinians. You know, how many more Jews are they going to kill? How many more radical states like Iran are going to? Are they going to bring down Yemen? They're going to go crazy in Yemen and then the peninsula and try and bring down Saudi Arabia. So as you know, as things get worse, at what point do they pull the final plug on the good old plugs, and the fall of Biden, the fall of Kabul becomes the fall of Biden? You know, so we're looking at it. You know, in their time period is a year now, starting from this election. So they got to get to it, or you know, the idea is to string it out as long as they can and blame everything, all the theft and the corruption on Biden when Kamala takes over. But I think they're going to have a huge problem. They've miscalculated it again because they, of course, believe they're nonsense. Good old Obama thinks he is smart. And that, with all due respect to our dear Andrew Klavan and company who think that Biden and Obama are not, and that's why I used Biden, are not evil, that arrogance is evil. All right. They fail because they are evil. That's that simple. You got to be humble in life. You know, you got to know what you know. You can't be thinking you can direct other people how to live their lives. You know, you got to keep your eye focused on the cross. You got to keep moving forward, you know, and the self-appointed elites, these un-American creeps who want to destroy everything that we've created to this great civilization are the real the ones to blame. Everybody who voted for good old Biden fell for it. Everybody who voted for good old Obama fell for it. And of course, number one, the fake press, who are the real villains in all this, because this was obvious and this was going to happen. And they did nothing but take political opportunity to beat up on Trump and the Republicans just because of political opportunity and their own evilness. The problem with America is the lacking of virtue and and the corruption that's systematic, mainly through the elites. The real people, the common people, the common man can't afford that kind of stupidity. And that's why there are no atheists in foxholes, because all the rest of us, the common man, are still living in the foxholes of our life. But it's been well over, and it's probably time for us to go. And I would just leave it with this fact, this one point that we pointed out way back when, unless you have something else to say, brother.
No, I'm good.
All right, so I would just leave it this. When it happened, when Trumpy lost, I pointed out that, listen, St. Thomas's rule, one of the greatest wisdoms of life that you can learn, good old St. Thomas Aquinas, it said God would never allow an evil to happen unless he's already figured out a way to beat the devil and to turn it into a greater good. And so the Trump losing will be turned into a greater good. I don't know, to all our poor family members and others who are watching the fall of Afghanistan, I don't know all the evil that's going on that happened to the poor Taliban, to the poor people the Taliban are going to be killing, and all the rest of it. What the greater good that's going to come out of this. But the rule is, as it's always been, it's just like we said when Trumpy lost. St. Thomas Aquinas got it right then, and he got it right now. God is still in control. It's still going to be okay. We got the best. It's just like in Vietnam, and it's just like you saw in the Olympics not a while long ago. You know, when the little girl went down from last year, Simon Bales, whatever her name was, she couldn't compete because her aunt died or whatever. The little Laotian girl, you know, stood up and she won the gold. And you know, and so yes. In one sense, we can lose Afghanistan, but we probably already have the best of Afghanistan. The people from Afghan who got out and are going to be, you know, in America today. And just like that girl was a Laotian refugee, just so she comes to America, she can follow her dream, which is the American, dream. Is it you and God are a majority? She follows that dream. She wins gold, and she shows what a great miracle this country is. And so just like the horrible fall of Laos was precipitated by the fall of Cambodia and Vietnam, so too will a great good come out of this. I just don't know what it is because, you know, he's the great author, and we will see. But whatever it is, rest assured it will happen because he always wins, and that's why we call him the big loser. And of course, the village idiot, anybody else who believes in him, a big idiot. And that's the piece on the fall of Kabul.
So everybody, like and subscribe our channel. Make sure you share this with your friends. It's the only way that we're going to be able to push back against the left. We need to get the message out from people who provide content like us, people who are pushing the narratives, pushing the information out there, because you're not going to get a fair shake from the media. You're not going to get a fair shake from the TV. You're not going to get a fair shake from the cable channels. The only way you're going to get a fair shake is if you push the information out through little guys like us who are growing bigger and bigger. So help us, help you, help our people who are fighting for us to take our country back. Brother, it's all good.
Because God loves you.
That's it for our show. Take care, everybody.
Fight and you may die. Run and you'll live. At least a while. And dying in your beds many years from now, would you be willing to trade all the days from this day to that for one chance, just one chance, to come back here and tell our enemies that they may take our lives, but they'll never take